On October 20th, 2021. We're running a little late, took a while to get the computers up. But please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nobody indicated anything on a public comment, unless there is some. Don't see any. Discussion and a vote. Interview for town administrator position, Rebecca Alderman, Director of Economic Development, Planning and Conservation. Rebecca, can you step forward? Why don't you just a brief description, everybody knows you, and then we'll open it up for questions or comments.
So my name is Rebecca Oldham. I am the Director of Economic Development, Planning and Conservation. I have been with the town of Groveland now for the last 3 years, a little over 3 years now. We started here as the first town planner. Since that beginning, I have kind of transformed that role into a lot more than I think people would have expected. I'm sorry?
You can remove your mask when you speak. We kind of made up that new rule. Actually, the Board of Health said we could do it.
Okay. So during that time, I think that I have expanded that role beyond what was expected of the town, and I have built a lot of great relationships with the other departments here in town, as well as established a great rapport with the residents. So I am here this evening seeking the position of town administrator because I think during this last year I would be able to bring, or all the uncertainty of this last year, I think that in my capacity and my role as a town administrator, I would be able to bring organization and stability to the town.
Thank you. Anybody got any questions for Rebecca?
Mr.
Go
Chairman,
ahead.
a point of order. I thought we were going to follow the protocol of the interview and have Mr. Lynch ask the overview questions and give us
all
a
right.
chance to just listen for a few minutes.
Go ahead, Bernie, go ahead.
Sure. The camera, I can't see Rebecca, so I'll try to work around that a little bit. No, I can.
No, you can't.
We'll fix that.
Okay. Hi, Rebecca. Good to see you. The chair just asked my first question, so that's great. You gave us a little bit of background about your, why you're interested in the position. Can you tell us about the positions that you've held before you came to Groveland, and how you've developed over time with your career?
So my career first started in the Division of Professional Licensure for the state. I was in charge of taking control of the licenses for landscape architects, land surveyors, as well as water and sewer operators, drinking water operators. Then from there, I started over at in Congress, working for a state representative, working on constituent services. I then moved over to the State House, where I also worked for a state representative, and also was in charge of legislative items, budgetary items, as well as constituent services. I then moved over to an engineering firm and helped prepare all of the project documents for any of the projects that the engineering firm was going to, were placing bids on, getting all of their specifications, getting all of the required forms, and moving those through the process, as well as handling calls and services between communities and businesses that they were working with. Then I moved over to the City of Methuen in a grant-funded position as the program coordinator, and I took on a variety of projects ranging from housing, environment, moving forward with some transportation projects, also starting into their community trail that they had been working on. I then moved over to the town of North Andover when that grant ended, and I focused mostly my time on the permitting aspect of things, the land use permitting, as the staff planner. So I really did focus on site plan approval, subdivisions, and things of that nature. From that position, I moved back over to the city of Methuen, and I worked again on those larger scale type projects, focusing on the green communities, Mass Works, working with the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, and then that technically led me to the town planner position here in Groveland.
But what do you see in terms of your background? You've been certainly the initial start with the licensors, the division of licensors, but then it's been a planning sort of approach. Where do you see your career going if you were to receive this, if the board were to choose you to be the town administrator? What does your career look like?
So essentially, it is interesting because I never necessarily saw myself moving forward in a town administrator position. I've always ever really considered my career going in the direction of an economic development director of some nature. And then as my role and as I started working here in Groveland more specifically, a lot of the different challenges and a lot of the different projects presented a lot of different opportunities that wasn't necessarily something that I would have associated with just strictly economic development planning type of issues. So in my role here, I really feel as though I've started to take on more of an administrative role just inherently in my position and the way that I approach projects. And so I feel as though through this process and through this exercise, town administrator work actually became more appealing to me because I felt as though my skill set were starting to align more with what you would see of a town administrator. So as for my career, I've always really focused on project management, grant writing, moving initiatives forward, and essentially really trying to take something and make it better than what it currently is. So in terms of my career, while not a laid-out career, I feel as though it's developed and the experiences that I've had have really transformed the way that I approach or would like to approach my career moving forward.
Well, actually it's a great segue to what is our second question, and that's talking about the role of the town administrator. You'd be the first town administrator in the town of Groveland, and obviously you have the benefit of having worked in Groveland for a period of time now, so you're familiar certainly with the structure, the processes of the town. How would you go about analyzing those, though, and perhaps you already have some ideas of modifications that you would make in terms of your administrative experience? How would you go about implementing change within the town process and system?
So I think right now Groveland is in a very unique position just because of the timing that we find ourselves in. We are beginning the process of the tax recap process. We need to begin our budgetary, the FY23 budget process. We're also planning for a special town meeting. We also have to certify free cash. So we have a lot of financial items that are currently in process and really need to get wrapped up and really need to have a focus. So I believe that currently the best thing in terms of approaching these would be to meet with the finance team and figure out exactly where they are in those processes, having known where they are in some capacity, but not really being invited to the table to kind of help facilitate those processes. So I would imagine that that would be something that it would be the first step in terms of just trying to get a handle on what we're currently doing and what we need to be doing in order to move forward as a town. And then from there, I believe then it gets into more of like potential changes and what would need to be modified. And I don't necessarily think that anything really needs to change per se. I think that it's all about the way that things are done in terms of communication. I think that communication is the biggest hurdle that we have currently, and how we share information with each other and across boards and across departments, and how we work together to get that information out there to the public and you as the Board of Selectmen as the decision makers. So I believe that a lot of the changes that would be instituted would really be just a matter of opening up those lines of communication, establishing those lines of communication, and making sure that people have the resources that they need in order to carry out their roles. Because we really do have a great staff working with us. We have a lot of dedicated people here who want to do the right thing, and they just feel as though I think that there's just no communication. There's no point of contact to get information from or to get information to other individuals such as the Board of Selectmen. And I think that just that very basic communication will change dramatically. So in terms of the question, I think the basic elements of administration would just be to highlight those aspects moving forward and then start to dive into where there should be improvement needed.
Okay. You know, and I want to circle back to communications a little bit later, but because I think that is an important point to note. But in terms of the other people that might be applying for this job, you know, we have a basic question of how do you come into an organization and learn the organization, learn the people, and so on. So I can't ask you that. You already have that answered for us. So but I have to ask you a question about that. How do you see any particular challenges being there in the position where you already know people, you already have relationships with people, you already are part of the overall structure, and so do you see any challenges in that regard?
Not necessarily. I think that based upon what I've been able to accomplish here, I have gained a lot of the respect of my colleagues, and we work really, really well together, to the point where I find that other department heads and other staff, when they have a certain problem, will actually come to talk to me and brainstorm about what we could do or how we could approach that situation. So even on matters that are not necessarily relative to planning and economic development, just to kind of hear my thought process and how I would think things through, because through what we do in our planning and development meetings and what we do through our other types of collaboration, we have that, you know, back and forth, and we are able to function like that. And I think that the town administrator position would be very similar in the sense that it would be an open door policy where you could come and discuss matters that are important to you, whether they're relative specifically to their role internally or whether there's something else that, as a town administrator, you could provide. So I think that it's important to have the respect of any of your colleagues, whether you're a superior or not. And I think that because I have that level of respect, whatever it is that we're moving forward and the initiatives that we proceed with, I'll still have that respect and we'll be able to work together and continue those collaborations.
Okay. Well, moving then into sort of, again, building on all this, each question sort of builds on each other. Talking about your management style, what term would you use to describe that for us?
We've been using it all along. Communication. I like to communicate. I like to share information. I like to make sure that people have information so that we can have a productive dialogue and that they know everything that's happening as well. So I think that my management style is not necessarily, I don't like to micromanage. Like I said, we have great staff. We have great people. Excuse me. So they have the ability to do what they need to do in their role, and my role is just to give them the resources and to help them carry out their roles to the best of their abilities.
Along those lines, what has been your experience in managing staff?
In what way?
In your positions, what's the number of staff members that you've been responsible to manage within those positions?
Currently, I manage 3 roles in the department right now. In past roles, they've been up to 5.
Okay. And how do you go about the idea of communication? What systems do you use to make that communication happen? How do you envision that working with the department heads and with the other staff of the town?
So as the leaders and the decision makers, I would first and foremost set the agenda with the Board of Selectmen as to what they're looking to see happen in Town Hall and the goals that they have and what they want to see carried out. I would then take that agenda and focus to the communication with those departments and with those individuals as to this is the agenda, and this is what is it that you think that you can do to help make that happen, and how can we implement that? And then give us a measurable step of how we can proceed and how we can step in and make sure that those milestones are being completed, and that we can then work together and make sure that we present that information to the Board of Selectmen so that they can see the progress. So I think the communication comes with just the setting the agenda, having that meeting, talking about implementation, and then moving forward.
So, but in terms of the meeting, what does, as the town administrator, what does that look like? Do you, staff meetings, one-on-one meetings? How do you hold people accountable for doing things? How do you resolve conflicts?
So I think that's all of the above. So I already hold planning and development meetings monthly with the other departments to get a better understanding of what development projects we have in place. And then I also hold those meetings to discuss potential grant opportunities and other types of projects and initiatives that we're working on. I'm gonna, could I just grab a water real quick? I have like a frog in my
Sure.
I was thinking the same thing. I felt bad because I didn't bring you one.
Would you like a mint?
Well, I'll start with the mint. I can grab the water though.
Little tickle in your throat.
Did you want to grab one?
Yes, if I may, excuse me.
Go on. Don't, I told you. Got the game taped.
Oh,
I
sorry.
don't want to. You ran around telling everybody that the Titanic sank, right?
I'm so sorry about that.
That's always good to have a water in front of you.
I don't typically do this much talking.
Yeah, well, I think we probably covered most of that with leadership and management style. The board may have some other questions as we get to their part of it. But you know, in one of the other responses that you gave, you talked about where the town is right now, what the most important issues are facing the town with regards to its budget and so on. What has been your experience in the communities you've worked in developing a municipal budget? Have you ever prepared a municipal budget? What's a budget making process going to look like with you as town administrator?
So I have not been responsible for the preparation of a municipal budget. However, I have obviously prepared my own department budget here in Groveland with the variety of boards and commissions that we've created and put under the umbrella of the department. I've also, in my career, been responsible for over $5 million in grant monies. Each of those grants have different reporting requirements. They also have different regulatory requirements, all under different and various state agencies. And that includes establishing the estimate as to how those grants are formulated and what requests are being made and where those funds are being expended throughout the life of that particular grant and or project.
Okay, but in terms of, let's go then to the question of what's the budget process that you envision? What would that look like? How do you go about preparing a budget? Walk me through a calendar of how the budget will be prepared.
So essentially, there's a lot of forecasting involved as well, seeing exactly what forecasting has been performed thus far, taking into consideration this fiscal year. The budget books need to go out by November 1st. We need to have departments submit back their budget books by the end of December. Then working with the Finance Committee, we need to establish the recommendations of the budget moving forward with the Board of Selectmen, and then establishing the warrant and moving forward.
Okay. In terms of the budget books that go out, those are the budget instructions that go out to each one of the departments and basically tell them how to prepare the budget and how big a budget increase or decrease or
Yes,
what
correct.
that look like.
Whether or not it's going to be level funded, whether or not there'll be additional salary increases, and what levels those would be.
Okay, and how do you figure, how would you figure that out? What
Based
those
upon
numbers look like?
it would be based upon whatever the tax recap sheet comes back with how much revenue would be projected for the next coming year.
Okay, well, a recap sheet generally summarizes the decisions that have been made in the fiscal, within the fiscal year. What's your understanding of a recap sheet?
So, so when I say that, I mean how much revenue and how much we can raise the budget in the coming year.
Okay.
So what our room of flexibility is.
Okay. The recap sheet that's being prepared for right now for the town of Groveland, what period of time does that recap sheet cover?
The last fiscal year.
Okay. It wouldn't cover this fiscal year?
Well, it would be the appropriations made at annual town meeting for this fiscal year with the free cash as well as the new growth estimates for the levy limit.
Okay, all right. And in free cash, it would just include the free cash that's being utilized, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay. What is your philosophy on the use of free cash?
Not to. When we don't have to, not to.
Yeah.
And only for one-time expenditures, never for operational.
Okay, all right. That gets hammered home everywhere, so that's good. In terms of how would you go about monitoring the financial condition of the town as the town administrator?
So essentially checking in with the town accountant and also the town treasurer and seeing exactly where we are throughout the year, working with departments and making sure that they're within their budgets throughout the year, making sure we're planning properly for capital expenditures and where those are in the process, and just constantly checking in to make sure that the numbers are reflective of what was budgeted as well as additional forecasting as needed.
Do you have any experience with developing financial policies to guide the town in its budget, in its financial decision making?
No.
Okay. All right. Switching gears over to another nuts and bolts element of being a town administrator, personnel management. Could you describe your experience with collective bargaining?
I don't have much experience with collective bargaining hands-on, but I have had experience with balancing and weighing different interests and playing an intermediary in different types of situations, specifically in the role of trying to figure out what the residents want, what the boards want, what the regulations provide, and providing that balance and facilitation.
Okay, all right. But in terms of the working through Chapter 150E, the collective bargaining statute of the Commonwealth, do you have a comfort level with all of the aspects of how that drives how bargaining takes place?
It would be something that I would need to learn more about.
Okay. What in terms of personnel, again, going with personnel management, this sort of ties back to the management style. How would you go about handling a disciplinary measure again with an employee? Have you had any experience with that, and how would you go about executing that discipline?
I've had minor experiences with it. Most of those go through HR when they get to that level, but first it's usually a verbal warning. The second is usually a written warning, and then the third is usually the final warning with potential suspension.
Okay. In this case, though, you would be the HR, right?
Yes.
So since Groveland doesn't have an HR department, so you would need to handle that. Okay. What's your philosophy on employee evaluations and assessing performance?
I very much encourage them, 100%. I think that it's really important to have a dialogue, and it goes back to what we discussed already. You really need to have a sit down with someone and explain exactly what your expectations are, what their expectations are, and make those goals known so that moving forward you can make sure that you're accomplishing those goals and that the employees have the resources that they need and they have everything that they need from you in order to perform the role properly.
Okay. And in terms of your experience with managing people, have you conducted these employee evaluations?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Right. And if the people are not up to, meeting the expectations, what are the steps that you take to bring them into line with your expectations?
Simply having a conversation and sitting down and saying what's going on. Like, these are the things that we had discussed formerly, and now these are the things that are not being done. What is it that's prohibiting you from moving forward with these goals, and what is it that we can do in order to provide you the resources you need in order to do that? Is there something else? Is it something that's bothering you that is prohibiting you from moving forward or getting these goals accomplished? And just kind of asking and having that conversation. And I think that by having those types of open lines of communication, people feel more comfortable coming to you with that information before it gets to that point where they're not performing, because they already know that there's an ability to communicate with you on that level.
Okay. How do you stay current with, and how do you develop yourself professionally?
So I would say that essentially a lot of the resources and the way that I get information, one of the greatest resources that I have found is the Merrimack Valley Regional Planning Agency. They constantly are up to date on all the things that are happening within the region and in the state, and they provide a lot of one-on-one guidance in various levels and areas. So I find myself staying up to date with some of those things that by attending their meetings and being informed through their newsletters, as well as also subscribing to many of the listservs that I'm sure you're all familiar with the MMA, the DLS, and the MMHR, and all of those other listservs that do provide a lot of information about what's going on both regionally and statewide.
Okay, all right. Of all of the municipal trends out there, which ones excite you the most as a municipal manager or soon-to-be municipal manager?
That would be transparency, accountability, and efficiency.
Okay, all right. And how do you what trend in transparency, or what techniques in transparency would you try to put in place in Groveland?
So we've already started to take great strides in trying to get information out there to the public. We've utilized our MyMap to engage in aerial imagery and allow the residents to interact with said data. Essentially, you can draw a geographic location and then communicate with staff through an email portal describing exactly what your position is or what your area of concern is. That also allows you to interact with the data that we have layered onto the map. So whether or not that could be your trash pickup not being picked up, they can pinpoint the locations based upon the routes that are on the map. It could be your stormwater infrastructure, flooding, other types of conservation concerns. It could be roadway infrastructure, potholes, need for a sidewalk connection, etc. So we've already started to take strides in getting that information out to the public, in addition to creating a way for residents to access application data and plans and other types of information that are being shared with boards and commissions that are reviewing projects that are important to residents around the area. So they can just log on to the website and they have all that updated information. So providing and utilizing technology in that way in order to get the message out to the residents and to engage their feedback and have that productive discussion with them as to how we can better serve them.
Okay, that's great. A couple of sort of nuts and bolts questions I wanted to circle around with, and you've already referenced them, but I want to, one you referenced and one I noted in your resume. You are MCPPO certified? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So you're familiar with 30B and Chapter 149 and
Yep. Yes.
all right. Have you bid things out? I know you've probably put things out through 30B. Have you done any projects through 149?
So the Public Works, yes. We
Okay.
are doing them currently right now in the town of Groveland with the Highway Department.
Okay, great. And in terms of, you've already mentioned this one, your grant experience. Can you describe the grants that you've received and what grants you see out there that you would want the town to pursue if you were the town administrator?
So we've been very successful with our grant applications currently. As you know, we've received over $1.6 million in grant funding in the last 3 years. Of those grants, they span across multiple areas of expertise, ranging from housing, transportation, open space, recreation, town centers, the environment, water and sewer infrastructure. So I feel as though we've really kind of broadened our horizons in terms of the grants that we have applied for and that we've successfully received. We recently received a grant for our master planning efforts, so that would be a really great grant for us to proceed with, especially during this time, and moving forward to identify how we move forward. So in terms of those types of grants, I would continue to seek those grants in those particular areas, being the Complete Streets. We just submitted a Complete Streets project for a sidewalk connection, Safe Routes to School. We have another project that we're looking at for sidewalks, the municipal vulnerability preparedness, culverts, and other areas. And I think that really the interesting thing about grants is how we can utilize those creatively in order to get larger projects financed, because we are a small community and we don't have a large budget and we don't have much room and much monies to spend. So whether or not we can be creative about doing either joint applications with our neighbors, or whether or not we take into consideration that Complete Streets can't be used on certain things, but it can be used on sidewalks. So using Complete Streets grant monies with MVP monies to do a culvert at the same time as doing something else with maybe the Safe Routes to School. So just being really creative about how we utilize those grants to get those larger projects accomplished.
Okay, great. Are you in Green Communities?
We are not. We are a municipal light plant community, and we are.
Oh, that's right. Right. Okay. You haven't been able to find someone that's off the system?
Nobody has National Grid. No one.
All right. All right. Okay. Okay. How about Community Compact money? Have you used the Community Compact program?
So recently I've tried to apply for community compact monies, and we were unfortunately denied because we have not moved forward with a project that we had received funding for in the past. So I was contacted by them, and they told us that we need to wait until the town decides to move forward with a town administrator, and then also get a commitment of support moving forward from the town administrator as well as the Board of Selectmen, that we will in fact carry out the requirements of the grant that we receive.
Okay.
But I am familiar with them.
What's the source of funding for the master plan?
So they just recently combined all of their funding into a program called One Stop, and the One Stop has multiple programs such as Mass Works, Mass Development, Urban Works, and some of the other larger programs, and you do it all on this one application portal. It's actually really unique, and it was the first time they rolled it out, so it was very different to see how things were done. But I think it was really helpful, and this particular one was one of the newer categories, and it was the community planning grant that was offered under DHCD.
Okay. In terms of, again, you have the advantage that you know the town and you've been part of the town, but what do you see as the role of the town administrator in terms of interacting with citizens?
So I think that a lot of the times there's a lot of residents that want to communicate with the Board of Selectmen, and they're not able to go to the Board of Selectmen on a Monday night to bring or air their grievance or to have a conversation with them, and it doesn't necessarily offer the greatest opportunity when you're sitting at a table in front of you all on getting recorded. So having residents be able to communicate with me about their specific concerns and what it is that they're looking for and how we can help accommodate them and provide the services that they would like to see as taxpayers. So I see myself very involved with the residents. I currently am very involved with the residents. I think it's really important for them to get the information that they're looking for. Even with, development projects that we have going on, they'll ask me where we are in the permitting process. They'll ask me where we are with the application. I'm always willing to, send them the information, direct them to the website, and if they're not able to use the technology, I invite them into the office, have them sit down, and we go over it together. So I feel as though I really encourage communication with not only the staff and boards and things of that nature, but I definitely welcome it from the residents and the citizens as well.
And in terms of dealing with citizen issues, have you had in your current role or other roles, the opportunity or the challenge of trying to address citizen issues and problems that that sometimes you can't satisfy?
Very much so. In this line of work, you can't please them all. There's going to be times where people have to follow the rules and they have to follow what is being told, and they don't necessarily like that. Being on the planning board, I'm not a voting member of the planning board. I'm not even a member of the planning board, but oftentimes the decision of the planning board reflects upon me, and that's me that gets yelled at and screamed at as to why they can't do things and what is the problem. And so I feel as though I've been successful at being able to describe to them the situation and to enforce the decision of the elected planning board, and to make sure that they understand that that is in fact the decision that was rendered, and how we go about that and what that means. And like you said, sometimes the answer that you're offering is not going to be the answer that they like, and sometimes it's about knowing how to give them the information and knowing when to step back and let them just continue to vent and to express their grievances, and then to say, well, if there's anything else that I could do, I'm happy to help, but I can't change that decision, or I can't make that any better, but I'm willing to work with you and do the things that we need to do on other matters. So it's just kind of about feeling out that situation and the temperament of the individual and the aggrieved party.
Okay. The Mind Map program is a great technology for helping get information out there. Are there any other thoughts you have on how you would get information out to the public? What's been your experience in using social media and citizen request services?
So I'm very familiar with the social media aspect of things. Unfortunately here, the way that it's been kind of divvied up in the roles, it kind of has gotten lost in terms of who's posting things on Facebook and who's posting things on Twitter. I don't think anything's been posted on Facebook or Twitter for quite this last year or so. So I definitely see the advantages of that. I know that board members can specifically attest to me emailing them saying, hey, can you get this information out? We're looking to get some feedback on our open space plan, or we're looking to get this, or this is a great event, or there's some business opportunities for folks, or there's some funding opportunity for some of our small businesses. I'd like to get it out there. So utilizing those platforms would be very beneficial. I'm very open to that and encouraging of that. I think that a lot of information people receive now are from social media outlets, so I think that it can be very beneficial.
Okay, great. Another question that I just want to circle back related to budgeting and also related to personnel. The great ticking time bomb in many communities is the OPEB issue. Do you have any thoughts on how the town should deal with its OPEB liabilities?
So I believe that Denise, back in 2018 or so, put together a policy, and we created a trust at that point in time, and because of that trust, we were able to move forward. And I do know that we did receive a community compact grant, and the DLS provided a paper from our budgeting process, and they had made some recommendations as to adopting the updated version, because a version that we did adopt did not include the parameters for setting up the trust properly. So I do know that we have that trust, and I do know that we have that paper, and I would be willing to work with the finance department in making sure that those suggestions from the Division of Local Services were carried through.
Okay, great. Back to relationships, the final relationship that we want to talk about, the relationship with those people sitting right in front of you right now. What does that, in your, if you were the town administrator, how would you define a successful relationship with the Board of Selectmen? how do you see that working? Yeah, how do you see that working?
I think it really goes back to just being able to have a conversation with the board in terms of what it is that they're looking for, what information they're looking for, being able to have those conversations and provide them the information that they need. I know it's very important for certain board members to get packets at a certain time so that they have more time to review. I know it's important for other board members to be able to access certain resources above and beyond because they feel more comfortable about making those types of decisions once they have that information. And I think that my role would be to accommodate the certain board members based upon their area and what they feel comfortable with in providing them the information so that they can make the best decisions that they can possibly make as the leaders of the community.
Okay. All right. Great. Mr. Chair, I think that answers all the questions that I have.
All right, thank you, Bernie. Anybody on the board got any questions for Rebecca or comments? Jason?
I do have a couple of questions. One is about if you're offered the position and you take the position, what is your plan in terms of finding your replacement, and what does that transition look like?
I haven't necessarily really thought about it, I guess. I would imagine that that role would need to be replaced in some capacity. As we had said, I know that I've grown the role to include a lot more than what a typical town planner would typically do in permitting aspects and land use and assisting the planning board. That role now currently also provides administrative support to the zoning board, the community preservation committee, the historic commission, the open space and trails committee, and the Elm Square committee as well. So I think one of the things is that we need to make sure that we do have somebody there offering the administrative support to those particular boards, because they currently don't have any, other than myself, have an administrative body to help them carry out their initiatives. So the plan would be definitely to move forward with finding somebody to take over those specific administrative items, and then having a conversation with the board as to how they would like to see that role, if they would like to see the economic development piece stay and be supplementary towards what the work as the town administrator would be doing, or whether or not they would like the role to go back to specifically town planner type positions. But I believe that it would be something of a conversation worth having to see exactly what direction the town would like to move forward with that, if I was to move into that role, because I do hold such a high level of involvement with the economic development side of things, which I don't necessarily see changing, as well as the grant administration aspect to some extent. And from a transition standpoint, I would definitely be working with whoever it was selected or that the board appointed to make sure that they had the resources that they need and work through the projects and make sure that they know what processes were put in place prior to their arrival.
Awesome. And then earlier you were talking about the resources that you use to help better yourself and get information from. I'm a little more interested in other people that you'll be able to reach out to and gather some of those information from. Because I know, like the questions that Bernie pointed out, you're a little short on the finance experience. And who would you reach out to for an additional help?
So I recently signed up, or I want to say I signed up back in the spring for the MMA Municipal Finance Seminar. I was supposed to be in their fall seminar, but they were overbooked, and so I got pushed back to their winter seminar. So hopefully I will be able to attend that, and if I am able to attend that, I'd be able to forge those networks more on the actual budgetary and finance side of things. I do know that I also just recently attended the MMA boot camp for town administrators and managers and assistant managers, and I met a couple of folks on that webinar that they were talking more about the financial management side of things in other communities such as Amherst and out that way, but it would be nice to formulate more relationships with them through that platform of the MMA.
And then, have you given any thought to what type of support staff you'll need? I know I spent some time speaking with a few of the towns around here, and one of the towns that I found interesting was speaking with Angus, because he called me after the meeting Monday, and I know that his support spans about 75% of their time in the finance part of it. So have you given any thought into what type of support that you're going to need?
I would imagine that it would resemble something very similar to what the makeup is over there, splitting the time from the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Department, and offering support there, and some minimal assistance with carrying out some of the other administrative items of the role. I think that would be a fair use of an individual's time and expertise, and it would also be beneficial to the Finance Department, who's in need of additional support, as well as still provide the Board of Selectmen with the support that they would need for setting their agenda, et cetera.
Perfect, thank you.
Kathy, do you have any questions?
Sure, why not? So full confession, when we spoke about hiring a town planner years ago, and I was on the finance board, I said to Jim Freer, who was the chairman of the plan, I don't know what you're talking about. What are they going to do all day when your guys aren't meeting? What would this person do? Because I'm thinking, what would they do? But Jim convinced me, and so did Mike Dempsey, that, nope, we can make this work. And we hired you. What was it that made you you left Methuen to come to Groveland? Can you describe a little bit about what your thought process was? It was a brand new job in a tiny little town.
It was the first town planner position where it was challenging and exciting, and it was something of an uncharted course where I could take it and I could make it whatever I wanted to make it. And that's essentially what I did. You wanted somebody to be a town planner. I think the idea was mainly to have somebody help with the minutes, help push through the applications, and the role became so much more. And I think that has a lot to do with my personality and the way that I like to operate and the way that I like to take on a challenge. And I like to learn, and I like to be resourceful, and I really like to make sure that I'm involved, and I'm very cognizant about understanding what it is that we're working on and making sure that we can improve upon those things. So I feel as though leaving a big city like Methuen, it was a little bit scary to come to a smaller town like Groveland, which has very limited resources, but nothing was more exciting than trying to be creative and figuring out how we can utilize monies and the little monies that we had to do great things. And I really think that we have been able to achieve such great things in the last 3 years. And we have some great people here, and we've been making some great strides to a professional form of government, and I think that in and of itself is just a really exciting thing.
That was a really good answer. Thank you for that. What do you think, well, let me start that differently. How do you feel that if you were hired, how would you introduce yourself to the town as the new town administrator? What would you do you think, to let people know, hey, guess what? I'm not the town planner anymore. I'm the town administrator.
That is an interesting question. I'm not too sure exactly how. I think it would take an adjustment for people, but at the same time, if I'm being 100% honest, a lot of people and a lot of residents said, why aren't you the town administrator, when they come to see me? And they always automatically say, well, you do this and you do that, so why aren't you doing the town administrator? So I think that there might be some confusion if I'm in a different office, but I think that a lot of the individuals that I've communicated with and that I've had dealings with would not be the least bit surprised if that was a role that I'd taken on, because they associate me sometimes with that role.
Thank you. I mean, I would agree. I know you jumped in when I needed some help with the trash, with the waste zero management thing. You did a great job getting that powered through the workday. You spoke about economic development maybe transitioning to the town administrator. Did I understand that correctly?
So I mean more so in terms of trying to figure out how we can use economic development to create more revenue within town. We have a parcel of land known as Strawberry Fields, 150 Center Street, that we purchased and we bonded, and we have that liability hanging over our head. And I really think that there's potential to utilize that property in a way that will make us able to either sell or lease portions of that property in line with a vision that's set by the community through a feasibility study, to kind of get an understanding of exactly what we want to see there, how we want that breaking up, and then we can actually make a profit off of a piece of land that we purchased and have been holding on to, and has been kind of a burden on the budget. if you will. So I feel as though economic development in that sense of how we can be creative and generate that additional revenue for the town, where we're not really going to be able to generate much more just based on all day-to-day operation and collection of taxes, et cetera.
Right, no, and I mean, we're lucky right now, we're lucky, we have bigger new growth right now than we normally have, so we have that. But, jumping in at this particular point in time, you already touched on all the things that are going on right now that have to be accomplished right now. Do you think that you would be confident and comfortable jumping right into the middle of that?
I do.
Okay.
I know that it seems a little bit like I don't have the financial background and I have not been involved directly with the finances, but I do feel as though that I am able to learn and I am willing to learn and I am willing to put myself in situations where I am learning and surrounding myself with people who will be able to help assist me in making sure that we're doing the right thing for the town.
Agreed. I mean, I'm not as worried about like you know, doing a revenue forecast because we don't really get that fancy about that. You know, it's new growth and 2.5% and whatever else is going to fall down our way. The financial management, the harder part, I think, is dealing with, you know, when you go through the audit reports, you know, there's an ongoing thread of things. And I know that it's going to take us probably another 5 years to unwind some of the stuff that was done 20 years ago. Does that concern you at all, or do you feel comfortable with dealing with that?
I feel comfortable because I think that it all tells a story, really, and how we get there and looking at the numbers and how they've developed and how they've changed and where they've changed and how they changed and what that means. It's almost similar to doing a 10-year trend. What is it that we're focused on? Where have we grown? What percentage have we increased over those 10 years? So we can identify exactly it is what type of community we are and where we're investing and what we're doing. And I think that going through those reports is actually interesting and really does give us an insight as to where we have been and where we're going.
That's a good answer. Thank you. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Bill, do you have any questions?
Sure, I got a couple. First of all, thank you for coming in. And Mr. Lynch, thank you for your involvement here again tonight. I appreciate it. Wasn't expected, but it certainly is welcome. I guess one of the biggest things that is affecting the town right now is the growth. When I first moved here 20 years ago, you could get from the bridge to I-95 5 to 7 minutes. Now you can't get from the bridge to the Bagnell School in 15 minutes. The traffic and the congestion have become, or are starting to become, a plight on this tiny town. Obviously, we don't have ready access to interstate highways, so we're a pass-through for a lot of folks around us. Is there any thought to bringing, or to try to bring, some sort of mass transit to the town to alleviate some of the traffic that we have? I see the buses, they pass through on their way to and from somewhere else, but they never want to seem to stop around here. And I would think with the growth that we're experiencing, a simple bus route maybe just on the 2 main streets would help to alleviate some of the traffic, if not all.
So we are part of the Merrimack Valley Regional Transit Agency. So we do pay and we do work with them in order to provide public transit. Whether or not we have a stop and whether or not it's a ring and ride and how many stops, I'd have to look into that specifically. But I do know that we have some form of public transportation in the MVRTA that we are entitled to utilize. Whether or not that's sufficient in order to address some of the needs that you're describing is a different story. I think it's going to be more of a comprehensive approach, and I think that the master plan is really going to address that, because you're talking about whether or not we're growing, where we're going to grow, what land we have left to develop based upon all the land that we have available for open space, recreation, what has been developed, what wetlands and things of that nature, and that will really kind of paint the picture as to moving forward how we're going to grow and what services and what is needed in those particular areas, and transportation and other services. So those are all really timely things, because we can talk more about those through the comprehensive master planning process. because those are at the specific piece of that particular plan.
Great. You've been around long enough that I'm very familiar with your work, but maybe some folks aren't. So maybe you can tell us, what do you consider your three strongest attributes?
I would say that I am very good at team building. I'm very good at being a team player. I would say being really good at sharing information and communicating.
Great. What would you say are your three greatest weaknesses?
I don't have any weaknesses.
That's a good answer. But we're all flawed in some way or another.
I would say that, sometimes trying to be positive and trying to get initiatives done and constantly, hitting your head up against a wall when something doesn't work and trying to find a different way of trying to go about it and being creative about how if this strategy didn't work, how can we do this? And I say that I guess the being relentless can sometimes be a weakness because I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how we can get things accomplished. But then again, by doing so, I've also been very successful. So I think if I had to say there was a weakness, it would be that specifically in terms of my personal attributes, is always trying to find a new way to go about something, and sometimes not always being successful, but sometimes making it work.
Yeah, I seldom consider tenacity a weakness in anyone. I think it's a good trait. Everyone has a comfort zone. I imagine you've grown comfortable in your role here as economic development planner and town planner. This is going to be a little out of your comfort zone to begin with. How do you deal with situations where you're going to step into something a bit uncomfortable? How do you deal with that?
Well, I think being prepared for the situation as much as I possibly can be prepared for that particular situation, and setting the expectation out front that whatever it may be, if it's a confrontational situation, is that kind of where you're going? Or just I'm comfortable with maybe not knowing as much as I should about a certain thing?
I was thinking more about the finance side, where that's going to be not, I won't say relatively new, but it's probably outside of your current comfort zone. You're going to be stepping into something that maybe you're not as comfortable with as what you've been doing. How do you feel about that?
Okay, I think it's about listening to where things are and then doing the research. I think one of the funny stories that I heard at the MMA boot camp was when somebody said that they were a town administrator and the Board of Selectmen said, oh, what is the tax classification or something of that nature? And they're like, oh yeah, we'll get right on that. And he said, then I went right into my office and Googled, what is tax classification? So I think that story was really telling about how you would manage a situation like that, is just to listen, take it into consideration, and then go do your due diligence to make sure that you understand it when the meeting or the next meeting comes around, or how you can best approach it.
I think that's it. I have no more questions at this time. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Dan, do you
Appreciate it.
have any?
Sure, I got a few. Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for coming. I got some general questions and some pointed questions, okay? Start with the softballs. Whoever takes this job, my main concern is that they have a mastery of just government finance. My concern is that I think you have a political science background. You do have, I think, 3 years experience working here. Do you foresee, stumbling blocks that you're actually performing, that aspect of, town administrator? that's a concern I have. And what could you tell this board and the people of Groveland to, you know, I guess, you know, put aside those concerns, that you're confident you can do it?
I think that right now you have a town accountant that you have increased their responsibilities to be more of a finance director, so to speak, and have taken on more financial responsibilities. You have just promoted and hired a town treasurer, a tax collector. You have your assessing manager. You have your finance team. Your finance team has been operating now for a year, and granted, there's been some hiccups along the way, but mostly in terms of the fact that there has been limited staffing issues and turnover and roles that were just recently filled and recently changed, because the change for the accountant didn't come until June, and then the change for the treasurer didn't happen until last week. So your finance team is already in place, and the town administrator's role, and my understanding of the role and why you didn't want to continue to have a finance director, is you wanted to have more of a day-to-day operations type of person in that particular role. And I understand the basics of budgeting. I have my MPA, and I've taken courses to understand that. I am furthering any of the, furthering myself in learning more about those particular areas through the finance seminars, and will take any other courses and learn on my own time to bridge those gaps for those. But you already have your finance team in place, and they're already operating those main finances and looking at the accounting. You have your finance board setting the agenda, as setting the budget and working on the budget throughout the year. So there are those parameters in place and those protections in place while I get more familiar with the particular finance aspect of things.
Thank you. In terms of your current position, you know, I was concerned, and others aren't. There's American politics, and we have there's polarization here in America, and I don't know that Groveland's much different than the so go Groveland, so goes the rest of the country, from my perspective. So there are those that want to expand government, and whenever you say, you know, economic development, part of me says, okay, you know, you might be pro-business, but you might just be expansionist. And I moved here for the small town vibe and leave it to Beaverville, and it's turning into something else. It's becoming gentrified, and traffic and everything that goes with expansion. So, you know, what's your philosophy on expansion of government, you know?
I don't see necessarily expansion in government as much as I see a improvement in efficiency within government, depending on what that be. I don't necessarily see us expanding as much as I see us consolidating and using our time and our department times more efficiently, and how we approach those different initiatives, and whether or not we collaborate on different projects so it doesn't cost as much money, and you don't have to hire a new person because this person does this in this department and this person does that. So it's kind of like an overlap, if you will. So I don't necessarily see an expansion in government as much as I see that we can make improvements in efficiency utilizing the system that we already have in place.
So you don't, as town planner, one of your functions, you don't foresee us having needs to expand such things as elderly housing or affordable housing, or what is your position on
in terms of actual physical land development?
Yes.
So land development is really set upon what it is that the master plan decides, and what your regulations decide, and what the voters decide. So if the voters decide that they want inclusionary zoning, then that means that they're going to want to have housing, affordable housing within town, and that is a decision of the people. That is not a decision of mine to make. My role is to carry out what it is that this board and the town people in town meeting vote for, and those regulations are all set by them. That's not set by me.
All right. And you studied political science, is that correct?
That is correct.
How do you think town meeting works when we have about 5,000 registered voters and we got to flag down people to get 100 people for a quorum? Do you think that town meeting has outlived its usefulness, where a bunch of farmers would congregate once every year and, talk about, raising a new barn or something? I mean, it seems antiquated if only 100 people participate in the process, and I'd like to know your opinion on, does it work?
I think that Groveland is not unique in that case. I think that there is a lot of times where quorums become an issue, especially for smaller communities. Coming from a background in a larger city, it was, at least when I went to the town of North Andover, which is a much larger town, it was very interesting to see the different dynamic between a city council and town meeting, and having all of your budgetary information laid out there and just having residents vote on it. And, residents would come up and be like, I want to put a 0 on that line item. And you're like, wait, what? Do you even know what you just did? And so I find that, but that also is really exciting too, because then they get to be involved in the process and they become more accountable to the process. And when there are complaints about why this is happening, they can take ownership for it. But as to the process, I think that it is disheartening that more and more people are not showing up. And when they don't show up, it makes it really difficult for you as municipal leaders to do your job, because without them showing up, their votes can't be taken, very much as if a quorum doesn't show up for one of the boards. So I think that, well, I wouldn't say that it's antiquated. I think that it's become more challenging as to how towns, specifically smaller towns, operate.
Okay. Bernie had asked you a question, and this is another concern. I think financial matters and oversight, even though you're not the finance board or the the town treasurer. That prior position of finance director, it seems to me like it was bifurcated. So that they chopped off the treasurer role, and we just hired someone a week ago, approximately for $70,000 a year. So now we have this new position, town administrator, which is budgeted, I believe, for $120,000. So I see an expansion of the bureaucracy, and I've commented on that in the past. I'm concerned about it. Not only town planner, I was against the part-time town planner previously. I thought it would just put more pressure on the budget. And we have a special town meeting because we have pressure on our budget. We had some gaps in it that slipped through the cracks, or the school budget wasn't foreseen, the $111,000. But is it possible that if you were to get this position, that some of your current position could be melded into the town administrator, and we could function with a part-time town planner, or do you believe we would need to fill that role 100% to your capacity currently?
I think that, like we had mentioned, some of the economic development pieces, the business side of things, and exploring some of those larger items that we discussed, being like 150 Center and the Valley Screw property and parcel configuration for things of that nature, those larger, more comprehensive like projects, I would like to stay involved in. The grant collaboration and the way that we coordinate how we approach grants, I would also like to continue to work on in some capacity, based upon how it really is a very challenging and unique way how you would approach it. Like we were talking about multiple different grants and working with departments to make sure that there's the crossover is being covered and things of that nature. I wouldn't say that, you would need an administrative body in that role 100%. Whether or not it needs to be a full-time position, I still think that there might be a need for that type of support for all of those particular boards, because you're not just talking about the planning board anymore. You're talking about the Zoning Board of Appeals. You're talking about the Historic Commission. You're talking about the Open Space and Trails Committee. You're talking about the Elm Square Committee, and they don't have anybody but a bunch of volunteers. And without having some type of administrative capacity to go and help them set their agenda and help them get their minutes without paying an outsider to watch the meetings and get their minutes done, I think that it's more, I would say, fiscally responsible to have that position and take those responsibilities and put them under that. So I would say that the role might still need to be a full-time role. But some of the larger items that take up a lot of my time, I would like to, and again, that position could still take care of some of those, I would hope to be transferred in some capacity to the town administrator.
Okay, I think I have two more questions, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay. Bertie asked you something to the effect of how many people have you managed, and I think your answer said you managed 5 roles. Is that 5 people?
Yes.
Who are the 5 people, can
Well,
you
not
say?
here.
Not
over
here.
in-
How many do you manage currently, and then can you take me back to, what experience have you had in the past managing people? Because I think town administrator has a human resource function to it in the description, so I wanted some feedback on you on that. What experience would you bring to the table there, and would you need help?
So in my current role, there's 3. We have the environmental program coordinator, and then I oversee the responsibilities of the superintendent over at VZ, as well as the director over at VZ Memorial Park as well. In my time in Methuen, I had 1 individual that I oversaw, and they were specifically related to some of the CDBG funding and things of that nature. Then over in North Andover, we had an administrative assistant that reported to the planning board in my role as staff planner. She was underneath my role as well, and we worked together. And then under the state representative, I had a staff of 5.
Directly reporting to you?
Yes.
Okay.
And the representative.
All right, one more question. You were on the search committee for this position, town administrator. So I'm assuming when you were on that committee that it wasn't on your radar screen to apply for the job. Is that, and if that's correct, at what point did you change your mind and why?
So it was always on my radar screen. I did want to apply when it became available, but I was hesitant because I wasn't too sure exactly whether or not others in the building and outside the building would feel as though they saw me in that role. And then as soon as I was appointed to serve on that committee, everyone that I did know, even internally, other departments, externally, and other areas were, what are you doing? Why aren't you applying? And so as soon as I got that much support, I mean, they were just left and right. People were like, well, you would be great at it. You know, you have the ability to adapt and grow and do all these things. Why wouldn't you take that opportunity? And I was like, oh, okay. So you do see me in it. And since I wanted to do it, I decided to remove myself from the town search committee because I wanted to keep my options open. But because I had been appointed to the committee, I legally was not able to put my application in. So I said to myself, if the board comes forward with an applicant that they would like to move forward with, and they're 100% behind, and it's all on board, I respectfully understand that I missed out my opportunity, and that's that. And so when the meeting before the last interviews, I think you yourself complained about only having 2 candidates and really wanting to see if there were any other types of candidates out there. And then the interviews happened, and then the board was like, well, we want to hear from residents because we're not sure. It just didn't seem like there was 100% consensus as to what direction the board wanted to go. And because of that, I put in my resume after that, feeling as though I had no conflicts.
Okay. Actually, could I ask one more question?
Quick one.
We've had 3 candidates come before us. They're all from Suffolk. What is with Suffolk? Is that the only school in the whole Commonwealth of Massachusetts that, educates people on government?
They have a great public administration program, and to be honest, they're conveniently located right in the center of downtown and Boston, which I was working at the time.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Just a couple. I noticed in your resume, prior to coming here, you were senior planner in Methuen, staff planner in North Andover, and community development program coordinator in Methuen. I didn't see how long you were in those positions, and where I rose that area was, I see here when you community development program coordinator in Methuen, you compiled the RFQ for Nicholson Stadium, the improvements project. Doesn't seem like it was that long ago that they did that improvement. So
the first position I held in Methuen, it was a grant-funded position, so it was only ever for a year. So that's why there was a little bit of a back and forth with Methuen. So I was there and then the grant expired, and then I moved forward to North Andover. And North Andover specifically really focused on what we had discussed as permitting, subdivisions, site plan approvals, and very much permit planning board focused. And I really thrive in areas where I find things to be more challenging and complicated. And Methuen had then, based upon that grant application, created a new position, and that was essentially what I was doing over in Methuen, which was doing all the grants and doing more of the initiatives and things of that nature. So I left North Andover after, I believe, 2 years to go into Methuen. And then, as we had noted, even when I first applied for the town administrator, I was only with the town of the city of Methuen for a year before I applied for Groveland. And again, going back to what Selectwoman Castronella said, it was one of those things where I felt as though there was an opportunity, and if I didn't take an opportunity, then I would not be where I am today, which is working for you for the last 3 years and making an investment in your community and enjoying every day that I come to work.
Can you just touch on these two communities you worked in, Methuen and North Andover? They have a large commercial base, which certainly helps out in taxes. We don't have much here. And like I've used the scenario before, you don't see the school bus stop up on Federal Way on 97. You don't see the school bus stop in front of Chesterton. Chesterton, a big booming business, great for the town of Groveland, very community-oriented. Do you have any ideas, and maybe you should, with you work with community development, to make it easier for businesses to open up in the town of Groveland?
Yes, very much so. We do have a permitting guide that we had initiated prior to my arrival that we worked on with the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission. I'd like to update that permitting guide, giving them all of the information necessary. We also have a technical review conference where if you're looking to open a business or looking to develop a commercial type location, you get to come before all of the relative departments within town, and we sit down and we listen to your conceptual plan, and then we give feedback as to what permits would be required, what approvals would be required, and have that initial conversation and give just general feedback as to whether or not we have any specific concerns, like you're saying, like, well, this is located here. We'd really like to see maybe an off-site improvement if you're going to do something here, and kind of walk them through the process. And it really kind of helps streamline that process, and businesses tend to appreciate that because time is money for them. So we've done stuff like that, and then also just working with the businesses themselves. We had one business member approach me the other day about trying to open up and utilize some additional space that he had for shared workspace, and what of those concepts and how he could maybe tap into additional resources and or programs to help or renovate that space. So working with the economic development coordinator over at the MVPC, he came in because they do a lot of that in Haverhill and Lawrence and some of the larger cities, and we sat down and talked about ways in which to try and help him in partnership with him in order to make that happen. So I think that a lot of times it really is, and I know I keep saying it, but it's really about letting people know that you're available to communicate and you're available to help and you're available to brainstorm. So when businesses have problems or businesses need something, knowing they have somewhere to go in town to have those types of communications. Just like Chesterton, there was a little bit of a who's talking to who, and then all of a sudden, we had a grant application and I called them and they're like, what, do you want money? And it's like, no, we don't want money. I want to work with you. Like, what can we do? Like, you're one of our largest employers. We need to have these conversations. And they're like, oh, wait, you don't want anything? And it's like, no, but we would really like to get a traffic signal on the end of that street. Do you mind writing us oh, we would love to do that. And just, having those types of conversations and letting them know that you're willing to try and help them. What do you need in order to be successful? What infrastructure is needed? Do you need help advertising your jobs in the area, in the region? And we've actually been working with the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission to do a business-specific website that will allow people to come and look at Groveland and take a look at exactly what vacant parcels we have available, or what vacant storefronts or businesses or buildings that can be occupied, what our workforce is, what our statistics are, and kind of create that, that work, live, and play type of environment. So I really think that, while we do have a smaller commercial base, that doesn't mean that we should neglect that base. And how do we help them have the resources that they need, whether it be on a small scale or whether it be on a large scale, and just listening to what those needs are and trying to address them and be proactive the best we can.
I'll tell you one, expand the sewer system.
And that is something that we are working on. I am working with the Water and Sewer Department right now, trying to get the connection piece from across the trail over and bring the sewer up to the particular area of 150 Center and over by Harvard, Yale, and that very, very dense area. And I know there's a fear of expansion, but the good thing about that is that that particular area doesn't have a lot of land area to be developed. You really are only going to service those small, dense neighborhoods over on the Yale Harvard side, as well as accommodate the recent development that's already there, the potential new development at 150, and then also it will provide Chesterton the ability to tap into sewer, eliminating their need for their treatment system, as well as offer an ability to expand and to hire more employees.
What's your feelings on staff meetings, department head meetings as town administrator?
100%. We already hold the planning and development meetings. I've got a lot of great feedback. I know Selectman Naves attends those meetings. We talk about a variety of things, and I would really, I've already talked to the town accountant about just looping her in on the emails just so she sees what we're doing, so she's aware of what's happening, and I would really like to expand that to be department-wide, just to have those types of conversations. And whether that means breaking it up into keeping the planning and development and doing something different or doing it all together, I think it's really going to be kind of just getting some feedback as to how staff also would like to interact with that role.
Last question, I think. As far as your HR experience, can you expand upon that?
So it is limited in terms of my HR experience, but I have signed up for the Massachusetts Municipal Human Resources is just offering a labor seminar this month and another series in the following month, and I plan to continue to attend as many as those workshops and those seminars as I possibly can, and keep updated as much as I can on all of the resources that become available through that listserv service.
Anybody got a follow-up? Do you have any questions for us or for the consultant, Bernie?
I do not. But thank you, Bernie.
Well, if nobody got any questions, I think we're all set. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it. You had some great answers.
Thank you very much for your time. I very much appreciate it.
You don't have any questions for us at all, huh?
Nothing.
Thank you. Okay. Next item,
Well, before we move off this item, I mean, we've interviewed everybody now, right? We've interviewed 3 candidates at this point. Now, we're waiting for the inbox to fill up again. 1 candidate dropped out, and we have 2 candidates left. And it's been about a year now that we've been progressing on this. So I guess what I'm wondering from my board members is, when do you anticipate having the discussion that we've never had about the candidates that we interviewed? Now, we've lost 1 already, so we're down to 2. Aren't we supposed to discuss these candidates, pros and cons? Aren't we supposed to do that? I thought that's what we were going to do at the meeting before this one, but we never did that. We never talked about how we felt about the interviews and the candidates' qualifications.
no, we didn't.
Right. So shouldn't we have that discussion this evening?
Well, it says on the agenda, interview for town administrator position.
Okay.
We interviewed Rebecca. I suppose we could go into a discussion on the 2 candidates that we have left.
Yes.
Do you want to start it off?
Well, yes, I would like to start it off if that's okay. We have Christine and we have Rebecca left. James Ryan withdrew his application, so he's no longer a candidate. And I've also heard that next door to us, Georgetown is busy interviewing people. So I feel that we need to decide if we have somebody before us now that we'd want to put in this position. I think we've spent a lot of time on this. Myself personally, I feel that I've worked on this position and this coming to this moment in time from the time I got on the board and filled out Lisa Dubé Carpenter's last year. I worked with Chairman Dunn. We worked for an entire year on this. Then under Chairman Wood, we continued the work and brought it to a committee and asked them to please give us recommendations. We brought the recommendations to a town meeting. The town meeting overwhelmingly said, go out and hire a town administrator. So I feel like we've interviewed some very good candidates. I think you look on resumes, they all have really great resumes. I mean, they're all going to get hired at some point. There's no doubt in my mind every one of the people that we've interviewed for this position will get hired as a town administrator at some point if that's truly what they want to do. No doubt in my mind. The question is, which one do we want? Who's the best fit for us at this point in time? And in my mind, I think Christine has incredible wealth of experience, no doubt about it. She's a really came across a very pleasant person. I think her personality is very good. I think her qualifications are exceptional. But when I read Rebecca's cover letter was when I thought, this candidate really understands the town that she's working in. She gets it. She understands why we've moved away from a town finance director, because we want a more comprehensive approach to carrying out the vision for the town. Yes, that's why. For those of us that have supported this, and it's a majority of the town that has, it's because we understand that a finance director is limited in carrying out the town's vision, but a town administrator has a wider scope. And I think we've grown enough in this town that we need this. I think she understands the vision of the town. I think she understands the employees in the town. And the fact that they came to her and encouraged her to apply for the job matters a lot to me, because we had the same thing happen in the treasurer position. When the assistant treasurer stepped forward, she held back for a while, and then she said, but her fellow employees said, hey, you know, you're doing a good job. You could be a great treasurer. Why don't you apply? I like the team. I like the team building aspect that's going on within this town hall. I think that's a positive for the town. I want somebody with a positive attitude, and I think Rebecca has that attitude, and I feel that she will hit the ground running and will catch up in little or no time on any aspect of the town administrator job that she doesn't completely know at this moment. And I appreciate her honesty in telling us what she's familiar with, what she's comfortable with, what she feels she can tackle, and what she's going to get herself more knowledgeable about. I like that.
Any other comments? Jason?
Yeah, I think that all the candidates that come before us have been really well qualified. I also know that one of the things that was mentioned was at our rate of pay, we were going to get somebody that was less qualified. So I was expecting that coming in. Somebody that didn't have necessarily all the experience, because we weren't paying somebody that had all the experience. So my concern is if we do try to get somebody with that experience, that we're not going to be able to secure them even if we offer them the job, even though it's public what our limitations are on. That doesn't seem to stop people from asking more. With Christine, I noted from her resume and her, when she was here speaking with us, and also on Groveland Day, she seemed to be a little more authoritative in her management style, which for some areas I think is absolutely phenomenal. But I think in Groveland, the way that Groveland has functioned for so long, without anybody, any leadership, I think somebody that's more collaborative would be much better fit. And I think that's something that not only Rebecca has, she's demonstrated over the course of her working here, by holding the meetings and talking to people and working with all the different departments, regardless if it was within her scope or not. I think the tenacity that Bill says is such a great asset is something that she has displayed time and time again, because if she doesn't know how to do something, the amount of research she does to learn it, figure it out, and get it done is just overwhelming. So I definitely would agree that Rebecca would be my choice.
Bill?
Yeah, of the two candidates we have left, I agree with many of my colleagues, Mr. Naves' comments. I won't live under any illusion that I think the finance aspect of this position is probably Miss Oldham's weakest. But over the last 3 years, she's demonstrated the type of tenacity that shows me that she is determined to learn and excel at whatever function and role she's given. I don't think she can choose to be any other way. I think it's in her DNA. She's a fighter and she's a winner. She's brought tremendous value to this town already in a role that was really a lot of people fought against at the beginning, and I think she's proving them and continues to prove a lot of those people wrong with the amount of grants that she's brought into the town and the way she's really taken on the job. And I think this job attracts her for the same reason the town planner attracted her. It's a chance to blaze her own trail where no trail has been blazed before. She's a Lewis and Clark, and I kind of like that. We've never had a town administrator before, so this is new to all of us. But in my opinion, I've not been able to criticize her in anything she's done so far. I think she's done an amazing job in everything she's touched. And if my choice is between these two candidates, I am overwhelmingly in Miss Oldham's camp at the moment.
Dan, you have anything to weigh in?
Sure, I always get an opinion.
No.
I like her. She's intelligent, certainly ambitious, personable, feedback, and gets along with most people. I think she could fit in. I do have reservations about her experience level. Heard me at prior meetings. I was impressed with James. I think this board scared him away. Okay. If he's still available, he would be my first choice. I'm going to be straight with the people of the town of Groveland. I thought assistant TA over there in Salisbury, working for former Mayor Harrington, and currently town manager over there in Salisbury. I thought he was worked his way up to a position that he had his eyesight on, and built his resume for that function. Wasn't on her radar screen. She wanted to be a planner. Planning's good, economic development, a developer, I think. I am concerned about that. Whereas I don't own all the real estate in town and I don't control what I don't own, I am guarded about it. And we need slow, sustainable growth in this town. If towns that get overlapped on that, run into problems in schools and taxes and forcing old people and people on fixed income out of town. So, not saying she's going to go down that road. I have no idea, but I am worried about growth. I just, in terms of her personally, I don't know that she's ready for the job. She is a keeper. Yeah, she's up and coming. I think that we should get more candidates and just see if there's anything out there, anything else. I thought there was a couple other resumes. I don't know where the committee is on that. But, at my point, it's a continuance in my mind. I will consider her. I haven't dismissed her in my mind. And like she said, I was upset at the process. I'm still upset at the process. I was hoping we'd get 5. But can't always get what you want, as the Stones song, right? So If we could get a couple more candidates and we could kick the can for 2 more weeks, then I think I'd be more apt at making a final drawing a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. I too a little upset with the process. And we have 2 candidates before us. I don't think we can afford to kick the can down the road any longer. I think we got to choose one or the other, and move forward. The town voted to go with the town administrator. We got 2 candidates before us. Rebecca has done a great job with us. She certainly excels in grants, and the number of grants that the woman has brought in has been just fantastic. Lacking a little experience in the HR end of it and financial background, but I thought her answers were pretty good. And I think we should make a decision, and one of the 2 candidates, and not delay this any longer, and move forward. I don't think we can afford to wait much longer. You got a follow-up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If it's the decision of the board not to delay the process any further, and we're down to 2 candidates, then I guess could I request a roll call on that?
Sure. Roll call on a vote?
Yeah.
Oh, we don't have
That
we
they're
don't
ready,
have
ready to deliberate. Is everybody ready?
you want to move the question?
We
I'll
haven't,
move the question. Everyone ready?
we haven't made there's no question,
There's
there's no roll
there's
call.
no,
When you were out of the
You want
room,
to cut off debate?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Want to cut off debate?
No, I don't want to cut off the.
You want to keep it going?
No, I want to ask if everyone's drawn their conclusion. They're ready to go.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Well, maybe you were out getting a drink of water when I asked. I said that we have net on this now a number of times. 4 times? And at no time after the other interviews did we really sit down and discuss the pros and cons of the candidates. And we had been directed by the town meeting, back in the spring, to hire a town administrator. And I understand it takes time and it takes patience, but I think we've done all of that. And we said right from the get-go that once we saw enough candidates that had the qualifications we needed, we would make a decision. Now, we had 3 candidates forwarded to us, all of them having qualifications we need. We've already had 1 drop out, and I know towns around us are interviewing, so I feel the need is imminent to make decisions here. Right now, us not making a decision is costing the town. It's costing the town in delays in collective bargaining because it's being handled by people less qualified than the people we've interviewed, us. Jason's laughing. Coordinating the trash contract was excruciating. All of this work has taken us months longer because we don't have a town administrator here. And the people in the town hall are looking for us to make a decision. And my feeling is to make a recommendation that we offer the job to Rebecca Oldham contingent on successful negotiation of a contract. And that's my motion.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? None? We'll do a roll call vote. Jason?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Dan?
We're after you.
Yes. I'll go yes.
I'll go along with it.
All right, unanimous. Congratulations, if you're still in the building, Rebecca. So we've decided to appoint unanimous Rebecca Oldham as the town administrator, and at some point we need to sit down and negotiate contract.
Mr. Chairman, if I could say,
Go ahead.
when I saw the agenda that we had used on the first interviews, we had an executive session set aside at the end of that evening. I I assumed it was in case we wanted to, as a board, as us, just us, have some time to talk about the negotiation strategy, because we're allowed to. So I didn't know, we'll see what we do the rest of tonight, but if the board wanted to at least start the ball rolling on how you would approach the strategy for the negotiation, that's why that's on our agenda for
We
tonight.
can do that.
Okay.
We can do that. I think she's coming back
Yep.
in. Rebecca, the board voted unanimously to offer you the position of town administrator. And
Contingent.
we'll have to negotiate a contract. We're going to hold a strategy sessions between ourselves afterwards, and then we'll sit down with you at some point, and we'll make a decision then. But congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm very, very excited. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I definitely not let you down.
Thank you for
All right,
stepping
thank you.
forward. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
When we hit the executive session, we can discuss this, how we're going to approach it with her, and we can decide at that point if we want to set aside before or after the next meeting to sit down with her. Sooner the better, probably.
Yeah, I agree. Sooner the better. So we should probably go into the executive session since we got Bernie here and have a quick discussion with him.
Okay. So do we want to do the executive session with Bernie, or do we want to do the?
Yes.
Oh, we do? Okay.
And why don't we move that up if nobody's got any objections? We'll just, and we'll be back, we'll reconvene, just a couple things after that to go through. Thank you all for coming.
Well, they were here anyway, but thank you
Seeing
for
as we're
staying
meeting
with us.
on Monday anyways, may I make a suggestion that we table the review of the interim? For now,
Well-
we're meeting 3 days from now.
If we could spend a few minutes after we meet with Bernie, there's just some immediate needs that we need to I want to make sure the board's on the same page.
Yeah, that shouldn't take
Okay,
long.
it won't take long. We're not making a big decision.
Jason, we're going to go into executive session, and we will come back for a short time, if you don't mind.
So just very quickly. Very quickly.
We're back. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in with us. We went into executive session. We're back. This shouldn't take too long. Next on the agenda is review the interim cover administrative, kind of awkward, but volunteer assistance from Nancy Lewandowski.
Right,
The
so,
first on the agenda.
right, so what happened was that Nancy, in my discussion with Nancy, she offered and volunteered to help with the licenses and the folders that were on the table, and Jason also volunteered, and I think they spent an entire day Friday and got it all sorted out and ready to go.
Yes, and the following day, Michelle got the stamps on it.
Do you think your button isn't?
Yes, and the following day, Michelle put the stamps on it, and Nancy came back by and delivered them to the post office in Georgetown because she wanted to make sure they got out. So Nancy was a huge help in getting that all accomplished.
That's good.
Okay, so the point is that we are going to have to do something temporarily on the issue of, keeping things flowing here. We've had a request for the use of the town sign out front. I'm sure there'll be other requests coming in. The finance director or town administrator over in Merrimack wants to verify these positions and their hours. Lenny Mirror wants to talk about redistricting, and we'd have a different rep for Groveland versus Merrimack. And so we need somebody to be helping us coordinate and get an agenda or whatever for our next meeting.
I could talk to Lenny. I like that sort of.
Okay, no, I'm not trying to divide up the test, but we need somebody coordinating our meetings
Well, you
temporarily.
would ask me to contact the temporary agency.
Yep, okay.
And I spoke with this Government Staffing Solutions, their nationwide outfit, and they finally called me back, and he had more questions for me than I had for him. They have a pool of candidates that are prospective, and he said he'll check in this area and see what there is. But he said, before I do that, I need the answer to a few questions. How long is this job going to go? The duration. What are the hours per week? And I told him that we had somebody at about 25 hours a week. And he asked about the wage. And I had mentioned that we were paying a former person $19 an hour. And so the comment was, forget it, you're not going to get anybody. And I was under the assumption that they would set the rate of pay, but that wasn't the case. He said that we would set what we were going to pay for the position, and the company would charge 40% above that per hour. In other words, if we hired somebody for $30 an hour, we would be paying 42 because the company would get 40% above their salary. And he said the higher the wage, the bigger pool of candidates that you're going to get. And so he said, before I can even get you a prospective candidates, he says, I need to know how much you're going to pay, how many hours a week, and how long do you estimate that the job will go. And after listening to that, I think that we'd be better off if we hired somebody locally for the position. Go ahead.
So Sarah from our finance board reached out to me and offered that she had a contact in a staffing company, Peter from Ultimate Staffing. So we exchanged some texts, and then we had a phone call, and he thinks he could get us somebody because he's local and he has some connections in the area. We discussed a maximum rate of $42 an hour, which would mean we're paying somewhere from $22 to $25 an hour. I told him we could probably get by with as little as 12 hours a week, because that's what we initially brought the position in at, 12 to 14 hours a week, to just keep things moving and monitor the sign, the website, the email, and get our agenda together. So I can ask him to send something more formal to us. But in the interim, would you like Nancy Lewandowski to help put together our agendas and packets for a week or so here or not?
If she's willing to do that.
She's willing to do it. She's offered to do it. Can you get her into a computer or something so she doesn't have to type it from, I don't know what she has at home.
Why don't we offer her a job temporarily?
Because Nancy's retired. She doesn't.
We'll reel her back in.
Oh, well, you could talk to her about the reeling back in. I'm friends with Nancy. I want to keep it that way. She's probably watching the show right now, so I'm not going to
I'm not happy she left when I got on the board before.
Okay, well,
I want her back.
let's
Please,
put,
come
let's
back.
put that,
But that wasn't you, Dan. That wasn't the reason she left, because of you.
Oh, I didn't say I was the
Okay, okay.
reason. I was just like,
Okay,
she
but-
had a wealth of knowledge and experience. And
she
it's like-
does, and she cares a
Then we were a
lot.
fledgling board that
Okay, so
expanded to
she's-
5, and what
she's-
happened?
She's offered to help with the agendas for this coming meeting and perhaps the next one if we need that.
Okay, I got a list,
In all seriousness, would it
pretty
hurt
much
to
the
say,
agenda.
would
So
you
I'm
help
going to
us out
tell her
until we
to
found
come
someone?
here,
That,
right?
Mr. Chair.
what's that?
Am I going to tell Nancy to come here to the town hall? Is she going to be able to get into a computer and see the, how,
We can
Is that
contact
some,
IT and
Jason, is
give her
that
a
something that
password.
you could assist her with?
thank you, Jason.
So in terms of,
Not you, this Jason, I
No,
think.
no, this.
Oh, this
Jason.
one?
Yeah, good. Look, I don't know if you know his qualifications, but he's like a
What
IT.
access are you requesting? What specific access? Like, are you talking about?
Well, because
his agenda?
like the agendas are in the computer. I mean, you just pull them up and then you change it.
You basically need access, so
You-
you have to talk
Yeah.
to IT in order to get that
Okay,
access.
all right.
Yeah.
Because I did talk to IT, because I had I talked to IT people this week, because the signboard, we need to be able to get into that. Then what was the other questions as far as the town website and the inboxes managed by Catherine. She couldn't give me the password and the instructions for the signboard because she was locked out at 3 o'clock on Monday, and she didn't finish her work.
he works well.
And so
Oh, so they lock our sign too?
so
Well, they locked her out.
she
When she's,
was locked out,
all the
she was locked out of
information
everything, and
has
she
gone.
did
So
say, when I spoke with her, she said that all departments have access to the town website to
Oh.
to put things on that, so that, and then the inboxes,
Well, we're getting everything. It's going to
yeah,
Selectmen.
she changed that, so that it would go directly, I think it's Selectmen
At grovelandma.com.
Administrator at groveland.com, grovelandmass.com, I think that was it.
Yeah, it's a new mailbox.
Yeah.
When I was here, because I was here when they shut her off, I said that we should probably send it just to the selectmen, because we don't want another mailbox.
Right.
And, yeah, so it didn't happen because it had already been set up.
Oh.
But we can fix all of that by utilizing IT. I can come in here Friday and take care of the signs, as long as IT gives me access to the computer. I know they gave me access to the Selectmen shared files, which allowed me to get to all the licenses and everything else.
I think it was a Chris that,
Yes.
I think I spoke with the owner. Is it Brian? Anyway,
So I know
and
I
he
can
said
do
he was
that.
gonna, Chris was gonna get a hold of me, and I've expecting a call today, but I didn't get anything.
Yeah, he's good. He'll definitely give
Oh,
you
yeah,
a
I
call
spoke with
tomorrow.
him before.
And then Beth is taking over a majority of the website by
Okay.
utilizing her assistant, who's
Okay.
much more tech savvy than she is.
Okay.
There's some access that she still needs that she doesn't quite have. So we'll have to have IT contact Beth and get that all squared away as well.
Yeah, and their question was, originally was, when Catherine left, for the, and this is the IT people I'm talking about, is how are we gonna handle, who's gonna be the point person to contact them? Or was we just gonna have them handle the calls as they come in from department heads? And they would prefer a point person, makes it
Of
easier.
course, it makes it easier.
And then, in I think it was the town accountant that I had spoke to before, and she said that she didn't recommend that each department head calling the IT, because there's a separate budget item for the IT, and the individual department head wouldn't know what was left in that particular budget. So it would be preferable to have one point person doing it like we've had before. But these questions I'll get some answers when Chris gets back to me.
Yes, that would be awesome.
Well, eventually, the town administrator will figure this out, how to do the IT, because the IT people
Well, they'll
said
become the point person.
they should come in and redo their contract with us anyway. But for now, so I'll ask Nancy if she can help with the agenda, and she can pop
And,
down and,
I'll give her a call tomorrow
Okay.
morning, and maybe I can meet her down here, and we gotta get that posted.
yes.
We got a few things to put on it, but it shouldn't be too difficult. Now that we have the right meeting ID number for the Zoom.
Right,
Maybe,
and I
What's
got
that?
to,
maybe.
And I'll
Yeah,
talk
we
to
do. I
Jason
just-
after the meeting
not
and
2,
get,
3, it's 3, 2.
if there's anything,
We'll have the
we
password
need
of that.
to
We
add.
can't get in that one.
Oh, that one we can't get in anyway? Okay, well, so be it. Also, I have to give Nancy credit. She raised a concern. I didn't know if you want to pass it on to, I don't know, who was the highway liaison?
I think that's Ed.
Was it Ed?
what
No, I
do
think
you
it was-
need?
I think it was
Okay,
Mike,
so
actually.
she said if you're going to put all those scarecrows down at Elm Park, isn't there an in-ground watering system there?
Yes.
So maybe we should be careful where we put them down
Oh.
into the ground.
I know Rennie is away.
good point.
Billy is in charge now. I'll talk to him in the morning and,
Well, just find out when they're planning to put those scarecrows up, right?
yeah.
Just make sure.
I don't know that the wooden post will do much more than skate around the plastic pipes.
Are you sure?
No, but
Okay, well, I'm not going to go and say,
What's that?
To adjourn.
I'm sorry.
Motion to adjourn.
yes,
The motion to adjourn.
at,
Is there a second on the motion to adjourn?
motion adjourn at 9:24. Second,
All in favor of adjourn? Unanimous.
okay.
Thank you.
Peace on it.